Eagle 6 in the turn.
Roger.
Viper 1 bombs away. One's going to climb high above 20 east to south.
Eagle 6 radar contact. Eagle 6 is visual.
Planet goes left.
Hello and welcome back to the DCS SITREP. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog. Let's tuck straight into it this week as we have a lot to talk about with regards to the massive patch from ED, which they were finally able to inject into DCS World. The newsletter began with another apology from the ED team regarding the delay of the 2.9.6 patch. It saw the intro of a massive raft of changes and fixes listed in the changelog, as well as the introduction of the Afghanistan map, a new launcher interface, new Supercarrier features, and 3 brand new campaigns. One of those is the Gamblers campaign from Baltic Dragon, and for those inquiring about the MiG Killers campaign from Reflected Simulations, he advised me that it's not in this current patch, but it will be coming, so keep an eye out for that in the near future. Let's begin with a look at the Afghanistan map, which I have to say is absolutely amazing. It's a big map module drop this week, and it was revealed last year as the next ED-built map coming to the game, with Iraq also set for release sometime here in the near future. Afghanistan is a country that has a long history of military conflict, and its more recent history was home to the infamous Osama bin Laden, the mastermind of one of the single greatest assaults on American soil, not seen since Pearl Harbor. As the blurb describes, the country has seen foreign aircraft in its skies like the Russian Hind and the Su-25 during the 1980s campaign against the Mujahideen. American aircraft like the Apache, Warthog, Viper, Hornet, Kiowa, Chinook, the F-15, and others in more recent times have also been seen in the Afghan skies. It will be another perfect backdrop for mission sets for some of the best aircraft in ED stable, as well as some of our third-party modules to boot. The first portion of the staggered map release, a first for DCS World in terms of the sectional release process, will be the southwestern portion of the country. Key features of this release, ED described, will see the following. We have 14 airfields, including Bost, Camp Bastion, Shag Sharan, Dwyer, Farah, Herat, Kandahar, Maimana, Zahiruddin, Faryabi, Kala-i-Noor, Shindan, Thurinkot, and Zaranj. We also are looking here at improved clip map technology, improved field and town materials as well. Now, Wags advised me this morning while I was compiling my notes here that this particular map required more of a focus on actual imagery rather than hand-drawn art. So even though we used rather high resolution, he said, images to 1 to 2 meters, it will naturally not be as sharp as hand-drawn textures that will not be as accurate to the true terrain. To include textures at sub 1 meter, the install size of the map would be in the realm of terabytes. So bear in mind that this is definitely a work in progress, and there are still some limitations with the technology with the maps. This is why some things don't always appear as crisp as what you would hope, or that the features down low are super high resolution. That, as Wags indicated, would require masses of data storage space, which is a limitation of some of the technology that we have right now, but certainly is a limitation of what some of our community members would be willing to, support because of the download size, and then you can run into other problems as well with running the map with the amount of detail that you have. So I think as the future goes on, this might be something that gets overcome as ED also streamlines some of the processes. We've definitely seen a little bit of a benchmark here in terms of the visuals, which I quite like, obviously, and expect to see improvements as more portions of the map are fleshed out. Now, they say here it is fairly highly detailed with fields, cities, towns, and thousands of smaller settlements. They state they have implemented a new method of collecting, processing, importing, and exporting data coming from OSM type data, as well as determining surface types from satellite images, which are processed, optimized, and vectored for subsequent implementation into the terrain module. Now, the OSM reference there is, I believe, OpenStreetMap's dataset, which is a free map system. So it's cool to see ED trying out some new technologies and working on improvements to the map systems that it currently has. And obviously this has had flow-on effect to some of the other maps in the game. Now, as far as the terrain goes, the team also advised that the graphics have been improved with detailed terrain rendering and new material for fields and towns. They go on to explain that operating in DCS, Afghanistan presents some unique challenges due to the geography, climate, and socio-political dynamics. The combination of high-altitude environments and limited infrastructure requires adaptive strategies from foreign military forces and highlights the importance of local knowledge and alliances. In broad terms, there should be plenty of scope for some really interesting campaigns in the future here using the map, and that could provide some really interesting challenges as described. Casseroles in particular could become the meat and bones of the map's biggest drawcards for aircraft like the A-10C and some of our growing list of helicopters like the Hind, the Apache, and definitely the brand new Kiowa. Now, while we talk about mission and mission development, ED advised also that there are various fixes and enhancements that have been made to the mission editor, map interactions, and static object handling. These include new multiplayer select role interface added to enhance respawn functionality, with additional information and the ability to see exact respawn locations on the map and interact with them. They say note that spawn location icons are aggregated based on the map zoom level. A server tab has been added in the briefing images panel in the mission editor. This allows you to add an image as a header to the first screen that the connected player sees before joining a coalition. As well, there is a new dynamic respawn slots system which has been added that allows mission designers to set up airfields serving any aircraft respawn its associated warehouse within the needs of the specific placement in the editor. Airfields with active dynamic spawns are specifically marked on the map with a hexagon icon. Parking spots are assigned automatically on a respawn request. They are coordinating with Moose, Mist, and CTLD developers for supporting these new spawn methods in their scripts, which is cool. Additionally, a specific dynamic spawns template system was added to customize dynamic slots, properties, and restrictions. So this is good timing with regards to the new map. Obviously, it will also be beneficial for Iraq coming up here as well. I think this is a spectacular looking map. Really enjoy the coloring, the level of detail in the mountains and the hills and things like that. Again, the caveat is it's still a work in progress. There's still going to be some work that needs to be included yet, updates and so on and so forth. But I think it is a nice benchmark from ED showcasing what they are capable of doing as this technology continues to evolve, if you like, and they get better at using it. And there are other changes that are coming about. Hopefully this is something that transitions to third-party developers as well, and we see more work of this nature. We have obviously a desire for other areas in the world, Korea, Vietnam, historical maps such as East and West Germany. That's been talked about as a possibility here. So there's quite a wide scope of interesting theaters of operation that I think are very promising for Eagle Dynamics and the community. Let me know if you enjoyed the introduction of the Afghanistan map, or perhaps you're waiting to see what it looks like before making the purchase. I think it is a really neat map, and I'm looking forward to seeing more development on it as time progresses. Now, while we touch on maps, it's worth noting that both the South Atlantic map and the Kola map got updates as well. With regards to the South Atlantic map, we have majorly improved visual fidelity for the whole map, which reacts with the lighting perfectly. They've updated the look and feel of the towns and villages across the whole map. They've upgraded all of the blocks to the latest technology from ED, which allows us to add more detail. So that's exciting. They've also expanded some of the housing areas in and around Rio Grande. There are some blending issues, though, around fixed assets such as Stanley Airfield. So there's still things to do there, which is to be expected. Now, while we're on maps, let's talk about Kola 2. They've added the new winter season with winter textures. They've added the port of Kirkness. There's been optimization passes on surface mesh. They've updated all the blocks with ED's latest technology. They've added more infrastructure around the map. They've added ports and villages in Finland and Norway. They've corrected wind turbines placement, increased the depth at Polyani Harbour, and they've removed some orange trees from field blocks. So good stuff there. Another introduction to the game was Flaming Cliffs 2024. We've talked about this several times already, and you can now add the F5E, F86F, and the MiG-15 BIS to your list of Flaming Cliffs 3 hangars. Generally, that's been well received, and it's currently running at a discount for the bundle until the end of the month. Other than that, it will bump up. I noticed myself that the Flaming Cliffs 3 assets that I have are now listed as unavailable and require download again as an available module to me, which is a little weird, so there's a minor bug there. Since I don't fly those assets very often, I may end up just uninstalling them and save some space, but it was a little odd bug, similar to the issues I was seeing with the F-15E and the Harrier a few weeks back. That's since been corrected, I believe, so again, a minor thing, but one of those ones is just a little bit odd. Let's talk about the Supercarrier. At long last, ED introduced some updates to the Supercarrier as follows. They've added the Airboss PRIFLY deck, or primary flight deck. You press right Alt plus F9 to enter the PRIFLY deck. Toggle movement and mouse interactive controls by pressing right Alt plus C. From the PRIFLY deck, you can move around the deck using the W, A, S, and D keys. You can adjust the ship lights through the ship light interface panel. You can steer and adjust the ship speed using the ship control panel. View recovery queue using the recovery panel. View recoveries using the plat camera screens. You can view the airspace around the carrier with the map panel. You can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, and the left mouse button click and hold to pan with it. They've added the LSO station as a slot. You can press left Alt plus F9 to enter that. They've fixed the arresting cable in the plat appearing too thin. So some cool updates. So despite some polish and issues with the Supercarrier that need work, I still think it remains the best rendition of carrier ops for a video game flight simulator that there is available right now. As I said, there's certainly a scope for a lot more in terms of aircraft. If we consider our third-party modules such as the A7E by Flying Iron Simulations, the F8 Crusader by Magnitude 3, and also my personal favorite, the A6E by Heat Blur Simulations, all in the works in various guises. I had pleasant future visions of a Cold War era deck stacked with a throng of these beauties next to the F-14, but alas, we're some way off this dream just yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I hope ED continues to keep pumping updates into the Supercarrier, because I think, like I said, there's scope for development, especially if Heat Blur Simulations also agrees to do a carrier version of their F4 Phantom 2. That will be a separate module, they indicated, due to the nature of that particular aircraft being quite a bit different from their current Phantom. Nonetheless, that would be very, very exciting. Now, while we speak of carrier-related matters and Heat Blur Simulations, they revealed a great list of changes to the F-14 listed as the following. They've completely reworked all of the F-14 engine sounds, both the cockpit and external. They've replaced previous audio samples and added several completely new pieces of audio. They have redone sound definition and sound configuration files. New code to make the sound more dynamic. They've updated the flap damage model, so flap actuators are more sensitive to G-loading. The flaps now have more drag at higher speeds and AOAs. Flaps can now blow backwards if actuators have been severely damaged due to overspeed or over G. Asymmetric flap limiter does not prevent flap movement with damaged actuators. New afterburn detent position with dead zone now configurable in the F-14 special options page. DLC and speed brake now wait 1.5 seconds to retract while the throttle is in mil or higher. Boosted F110 mid-range RPM thrust. Cool. F-14 now may explode if engine fires are allowed to linger or propagate. They've added and updated visual effects for engine damage as well. There's new oil leak animation, improved engine smoke animation, improved engine fire animation, new compressor stall flame animation, fixed bugs in the fire detection and suppression system, increased pitch effect from thrust and landing configuration, slightly decreased roll power and ailerons and stabs, slightly increased dihedral effect and landing configuration, so aircraft will return to wings level at very small side slips or bank angles. That's kind of cool. Fixed main wheel IDs that prevented anti-skid from working properly. Added night filter bind for VDI and the DDD. Fixed bingo knob animating mirrors instead of the knob. Fixed the Rio Master caution lamp buttons, which are not clickable. And they've fixed a bug in Operation Reforger 2, Mission 3, not allowing the player to progress thanks to Rocket there. So an impressive list, given how much work Heat Blur is doing on the Phantom 2 as well, and it's always nice to know a developer like Heat Blur hasn't forgotten its other modules and continues to show some love to them. The F-14 wasn't alone this week in getting tweaks, and the Viggen 2 received a very, very long list of impressive updates as well. I'll refer you to the changelog if you want to check that out. Well, let's turn to some core updates now that ED has been working on, and the first will be immediately apparent, and that's the new UI launcher. I really like this. It's aesthetically pleasing with the video footage and the images seen in the center there, and allows you to make quality of life changes up front in the game. Definitely brings the UI into the 21st century, so bravo ED on that update. That's a really neat one. A big focus for ED this round was AI, and I actually counted up 25 line items for changes or improvements to AI components in the game. Some of these include things like the AI ground artillery shoot and scoot option, which has been added. So currently it is linked to the fire at point task in the mission editor. After completing the fire task, the artillery group will immediately relocate within a given radius to avoid enemy counter battery fire. So this is a realistic thing. Another is the combat landing option for AI helicopters, which allows them to approach and land with much more expedition, if you like, or haste, which is a critical function if you want to avoid incoming fire. Obviously, aircraft coming into land are particularly vulnerable to ground fire, as that's when they are low and slow, especially for helicopters. We talked recently too about the air target direction system for ground AI, and I was also pleased to see options for evasion of anti-radiation missiles, where a SAM site has the capacity to switch off its radar if it's unable to move or evade quickly enough. A nice little, again, adjustment to AI, which does need some work. And as I said last week, AI issues have been at the forefront of some of the discussion points in the community, as they have been for some time. And I know ED is listening to these concerns, given Nineline, for example, commenting on a video recently, mentioning that, we're aware that thanks for bringing this to our attention and we're working on this. We are making some improvements, but this isn't, enough of an improvement. Now, unfortunately, none of these issues will be fixed overnight in terms of AI, but I believe concentrating on the idiosyncratic problems some of the AI has is a priority in the game for ED's mission statement, and I think this will greatly enhance the base player experience which of course most of the base player experience is based on solo play, so work in the AI area is pretty critical. In addition to these line items, we also saw numerous multiplayer fixes regarding synchronization problems, mission editor fixes, and 22 line item updates for weapons ranging from AIM-9X drag ratio tweaks to the smokiness of rockets being dependent on ambient air temperature. So again, a pretty comprehensive list of core updates to DCS World. If we turn now to aircraft, as expected, numerous aircraft received updates. We've already talked about the F-14. Of note, ED advised that the F-15E radar, which wasn't working, has been fixed, and that's great news. It doesn't address, obviously, community concerns about the long-term future of the module or the Razman thing going on right now, but at least people aren't having to come up with workarounds for the radar issue. Speaking of radar, both the F-16 and the F-18 had an update to their radars that introduced false targets. Now, these false targets are caused by internal receiver noise and ambient noises at the receiver input, ED advised. According to the blurb, the average rate of these false targets is about 1 per minute. I'm kind of interested to see this in action and what the thoughts of the community are on this. It's always exciting to see improvements to the sensor technology that is available in the game and mimicking to a greater or lesser degree whatever realism they can create due to the general secrecy surrounding some of these systems. Now, of greater interest for a lot of players perhaps was ED's statement that the sniper pod is in advanced stages of development, and that should be released later this year, which again is exciting news. I'm looking forward to that no end. Fingers crossed it manages to make the long-awaited appearance that we have been expecting. Aircraft receiving the most number of changes this patch were the Viggen, the F-4E by Heat Blur, no surprise there given that it's a new aircraft, although I was very interested to see how much work they did on the Viggen. It was pretty cool. The Phantom 2 being their latest baby was no surprise that more work is being done on that as an early access module. And while we're on that, the Phantom 2 as a model has now replaced ED's in-house AI model. The Mirage F1 Argus was another big receiver of numerous updates, as I said, along with most of the aircraft in-game, all of which I will refer you to the extensive list found in the changelog. It's too much tedium for me to go through every line item, but I just wanted to pick on a couple of highlights for you.
Strike, Raven 402, up for checks, freelance with 405.
Roger, Raven 402. Radar contact, clear freelance.
Let's round out this week's video with a quick discussion about the Gamblers campaign, which was introduced. This has been highly anticipated. It's produced by Baltic Dragon, and we are also seeing support from John Rainwaters, who is a former Viper demo team pilot and member of the 77th Fighter Squadron. He's also host of the Afterburn podcast, and many of you will be familiar with him. So in this campaign, we have 13 varied missions. You will relive some of the sorties that Rain and his squadron flew during the deployment to Syria. So there's some historical accuracy and some realism being built into this, as well as some of the most iconic moments of the Allied involvement within the theater, including the Battle of Raqqa in 2017, the US TLAM strike against the Shayrat airbase, and the standoff between US forces and the notorious Wagner Group, which is now known as the Battle of Kasham. Pretty interesting. If you haven't looked that up, it's a pretty amazing story. Now, the campaign also introduces a new and more immersive way of interacting with the environment using the HOTAS. So do check that out. If you are interested in the Gamblers campaign, you can't go wrong with Baltic Dragon's work, and it's fantastic that both him and also Reflected, and I think probably a few others too, have been able to drag in people like Ward Carroll, people obviously like John Rain. We've seen Bio Baranek, we've seen Pakagrichi, who flew F-14s in Reflected's Speed and Angels campaign, to name a few, and I apologize if I'm missing anyone out there, but it's really, really useful having snippets of real-world pilots bringing in their expertise and able to share, like I said, snippets of their knowledge with us that helps reinforce a degree of realism, a degree of professionalism, if you like, to the kinds of missions that we would expect to see in the real world and how they might unfold, given the limitations of the game and the limitations of the software itself, and so on and so forth. But really cool to have that input. So great campaign. based on what I'm hearing. Very, very positive feedback generally from the community. I understand there are some bugs and things that have crept in, which Baltic kind of said on Discord is the story of his life. So expect some updates in the next patch. But again, well worth getting your hands on. There were, of course, 2 other campaigns as well. So check out the e-store if you're interested in any of these to, again, embellish your flight experiences with DCS World. Now, at the time of the writing, recording, and development of this particular video, WAGS had actually released this morning a nice little video on the Chinook showcasing how to get it started. It was an abbreviated start, I think, just a quick and dirty one as he described it. Nonetheless, it was exciting to see it in the game, up and running, and in some way, shape, or form functional. We will have to wait and see when it actually gets released and injected into the game, whether or not they hold on to it for a little bit longer for more development work, or whether they do release it as they described with quite a lot of features missing. WAGS mentioned that the MFDs and CDU systems within the aircraft are probably going to be videos in their own right, which is to be expected, similar to what we saw with the Apache, similar to what we saw with the A10C2, which have pretty multi-layered systems. Obviously, there's a lack of weapons, so we don't have to worry about that side of things, but there will be a lot of programming and probably pre-flight preparation. So we'll see what WAGS produces and what ED produces with regard to that. And again, we'll have to wait for the release date to be announced, but exciting to see it, like I said, in the flesh, in-game, and in some way up and running, which is a good thing. Well, I think that'll do. Like I said, it was a very, very big patch. Do check out the changelog if you're looking for a little bit more specific information on something that I haven't covered. I'm going to let the Afghanistan map do a little bit of talking here, along with some of the other maps here as well. You may see some mixed images in there. I think it's been a positive patch. Even though we don't have the Chinook, we should expect more from that very, very soon. So fingers crossed. We've got other things we're looking forward to as well. Like I said, the MiG Killers campaign from Reflected. And hopefully we'll start seeing some more information on the MiG-29 here as well. And also the Hellcat, which is in the list of projects being worked on. We also have our third-party developers as well, waiting in the wings. Octopus G, for example, with the LA-7. We're still waiting for the Corsair from Magnitude 3. Good times for Eagle Dynamics and the community. So let's enjoy the franchise and enjoy the flying. I am looking forward to a little break coming up. I am going to return to New Zealand and the homeland for a little bit. So I will be offline coming up in a few weeks to get some R&R and catch up with the family, which is going to be exciting. All right, cheers everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is Prickly Hedgehog out. We'll see you next time.